Alright, guys, so we are moving closer and closer to the BRICS summit in Kazan, and we must talk about what to expect, and that, of course, means confronting the elephant in the room. Is Saudi Arabia going to join BRICS, or are they giving Russia and China the big runaround? And these are big questions, and we need to find the answers. Because if the Saudis join, it will be a game changer, and if they don't, it will be a temporary setback to the BRICS and de-dollarization will face a delay. But let's start with what Putin said earlier. BRICS will generate the most economic growth in the coming years. BRICS is bigger and is growing faster than the Western nations. He also emphasized that economic growth will increasingly depend less on external influence, and that is economic sovereignty. What Russia is thinking is the same as what China wants as well, to develop an economic bloc that trades with the world but is also self sufficient. BRICS can fulfill each other's supply and demand. But to accomplish this, the BRICS, all their infrastructure has to be set up, and it's both the financial as well as the physical. The BRICS economies and their trade routes have to be connected to each other. Now, that aspect is handled by China, and that's why, with the Belt Road Initiative, they are using their enormous trade surplus and giving loans to connect Eurasia and Africa, linking all the way down to Southeast Asia. And this also includes ports in Latin America and connecting trade from Brazil to the Pacific Ocean. This allows the uninterrupted flow of goods on Chinese infrastructure. Now, Russia's plan is a little different. What they are doing complements what China is doing. During the BRICS summit, Putin's main agenda is to float the idea of a BRICS cross border payment system. It would be a network of commercial banks linked to each other through the BRICS central banks. Trade can be done using local currencies instead of exchanging them for dollars first. Russia wants to protect trade flows between member countries even if one or more are denied access to the international financial system. So even if Brazil or China gets kicked out of SWIFT, trade will continue and GDP will continue to grow. Now, this is perfectly reasonable. If we look at the level of dollar weaponization over the past 2 years, it's really hard to see if any BRICS member will disagree on this. And there's ample evidence to understand the fear countries around the world have regarding this. Just look at how much gold central banks added, over 1,000 tons each in 2022 and 2023. Demand reached nearly 500 tons in the first half of this year alone. But notice something interesting. Since 2022, the demand for gold just exploded from the year prior, more than double the amount. And guess what happened the exact same year? The sanctions on Russia, especially the asset confiscation. Now let's talk more about Saudi Arabia and BRICS. Since the start of the year, Saudi Arabia was expected to join BRICS. The invitation was sent out and we are still waiting for the Saudis to formally accept. A few days ago, the Kremlin backtracked on their comments about Saudi BRICS membership. They say the kingdom was a member and then they did a U-turn. So the question is still left very much open. Now, if you're in the global south, you want Saudi Arabia to join. It would open up a lot of avenues for de-dollarization. Selling crude oil for the Chinese RMB is one great example. But we have to understand the complex situation MBS is facing. There's speculation that MBS himself won't attend the summit. He will send the Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal instead. And it tells us that the kingdom is treading a very fine line. And we don't need to look far to understand why. Firstly, the Middle East is literally on fire. We have the threat of open war between Iran and Israel, so the entire situation is extremely volatile. What we are seeing is a cautious Saudi Arabia. MBS is sitting on the fence because of the Iranian situation. He needs US protection if things erupt and the kingdom somehow gets dragged in, gets involved. Let's not forget that the US is an interventionist global power and they most definitely have an interest in the Middle East. But countries like China isn't about sending troops, they mind their own business. China is about global trade and economic relations. However, the kingdom still needs protection right now, and that's why they're looking to sign a defense treaty with the US. The Iranian situation just complicates everything with regards to BRICS. Saudi Arabia is likely placing national security as the main priority now, especially with the impending Israel strike on Iran and what Iran might do to the surrounding neighboring countries, and it's very understandable. There's just too much at stake here. That's why they are buying billions of dollars in weapons from the US. MBS, whether we all like it or not, has to play a very delicate balancing game. The bedrock of the entire Saudi economy, the oil industry, is at tremendous risk. Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure is located at critical choke points that can be shut down by Iran or their proxies. Towards the east, we have the Strait of Hormuz, which is next to Iran. The Fujairah terminal, which the Saudis can use to bypass the choke point, is also next to the Iranians. In the southwest, you have the El Mandeb Strait, and that's next to the Houthis in Yemen. That area is also risky. If things escalate Saudi Arabia, they will have to divert their cargoes past the Suez Canal and cause a big jam there. That is going to clobber their revenues and economy, and it's the best case scenario. So we shouldn't expect them to formally join BRICS just yet. The Iran situation is just too volatile and risky. MBS will probably sit on the fence and wait this one out. But let's shift base to Japan because the yen disaster is about to reignite once again. And this is the classic story of debt and how we can trap your economy while destroying your currency. And if we don't learn from this, even the US dollar will be next. Japan's debt today is over 260% of GDP. That's an enormous amount of debt, and because of that, they can't really maneuver at all. If they hike, the economy could implode. And to no one's surprise, the Japanese yen is starting to collapse back again. It's now 150 to the dollar and is at a key intervention level. This is very dangerous for both Japan and the global markets. We saw what happened last time the Bank of Japan hiked rates to defend the yen. It unwound the yen carry trade and imploded every stock market on planet Earth, from the S&P all the way to the Nikkei. And if we analyze the situation and we read the tea leaves, we'll quickly see Japan is in big trouble. They are trapped. The only release valve they have left is to let the currency weaken even further. And if you're a gold investor, this is a very powerful tailwind you must keep an eye on. Firstly, Japan's exports have declined by 1.7% in September from a year ago, the most since 2021. Everything from cars, fuels, and machineries, they are falling in demand. This is weird and it kind of contradicts common thinking. If the yen falls, shouldn't that make Japan's exports cheaper and drive demand up? From December 2023 to August this year, exports from Japan did indeed grow. Some months even went above 10% growth, but the story is starting to change despite the yen staying weak. Japan is losing momentum, and even a weaker currency can't seem to save their industries. Global demand is falling, and we don't need to look far. Chinese trade, which is more competitive than Japan, is also feeling the heat. China's own exports have taken a hit. They grew by only 2.4% in September when it grew by nearly 9% in August. This is a warning signal to the world. Global demand is starting to drop, and the biggest manufacturers in the world, they're starting to sell a lot less. Japan now faces a very painful dilemma. Do they allow the yen to strengthen and boost local consumption, or let it fall further to prevent an export collapse? It's important to factor in the political direction of Japan. The new Prime Minister Ishiba is terrified of deflation. In his first policy speech, he explicitly said he would end deflation in Japan. He has vowed big spending and fiscal firepower. He's going to ramp up government spending, and the money will be borrowed into existence. You can't possibly do that while jacking rates up. So Japan, they have telegraphed the punch. Like the US and China, the third biggest economy in the world is starting to ease as well. And sit back and absorb this. We have the US spending over 6% of GDP in their national deficit. China's stimulus is around a trillion yuan and could double or even triple very soon. Plus, the ECB just lowered rates by 25 basis points. You have the biggest economies in the world all easing at the same time. Money is about to get cheap and flood the world. The price of gold is sounding alarm bells here. We are now well above $2,700 an ounce, and understand this, gold rising higher is not really a good thing. It's a barometer of chaos and how fast money is being debased. Things are far from stable. People, they just don't trust currencies anymore, and they are moving more towards a safe haven asset. The LBMA says gold could hit $2,900 in the next 12 months, and sure, they are talking their own book 100%, but they might be right. This fear is only one driver. We must remember how significant the rise of BRICS is for gold. Over the next decade, we can expect the price to be way higher than $2,700. Firstly, the BRICS economies are growing extremely fast. In 2024, the global economy will grow at around 3.2%. The majority of the BRICS will have growth higher than that, India at nearly 7%, China at 4.6%, and these are some of the biggest gold consumers in the world. If you throw in the threat of dollar weaponization, we can expect central banks in the BRICS to continue buying more physical gold. Instead of holding dollar assets like treasury bonds, they will continue to de-risk, especially China and Russia. And as their trade surplus grows, they will continue to build up their gold reserves. And this is awesome news for the price of bullion going forward. Let's also not forget the ultimate black swan coming in 2025, and that is Donald Trump. Trump is most likely coming back to office and is threatening to punish the world. We have threats against countries looking to de-dollarize and threats of a global trade war. It's really crazy when even Janet Yellen is afraid. Let's not forget, Yellen is one of the architects of economic sanctions, and even she thinks Trump is taking things a little too far.
I think the idea of isolationism as an approach to our relations with the world is highly misguided and would be very dangerous and would be very harmful to Americans. The proposals that we've heard for broad-based tariffs, a group of economists recently weighed in that they overwhelmingly thought that this would harm economic growth and it would raise inflation, face consumers with higher prices for a broad range of goods that we buy that we don't even make in America, toys and other manufactured goods of that sort. And it would raise the costs for all of the producers that are reliant on inputs from abroad that would be subject to tariffs.
So if the US goes full protectionist, there'll be less trade with the rest of the world, and by extension, a lesser need to transact in the reserve currency. So hang tight guys, the level of uncertainty is really escalating here. We have two hot wars going on. We have no idea how bad the Iranian situation could get. The BRICS summit is starting in just a matter of days, and the biggest economies in the world, they are easing like never before. But let me know what you think. Will Saudi Arabia ever formally join BRICS? And how much higher can the price of gold go? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.